Good morning. I'm here with Wheaton and Shawn Klassen-Koop, and they've just written a book, and I'm really excited to talk about it with them. Shawn, Paul, thank you so much for hanging out today.
Thanks for having us.
So your book is called Building a Better World in Your Backyard Instead of Being Angry at the Bad Guys. I think that title explains a lot.
I knew that. I knew the answer to that. Yes.
So I think that title tells us a lot about what we can expect to find in your book. Can you tell me a bit about what motivated you to write it?
I think this is it started off probably about 60% of the book is stuff that I have either written or podcasted about or something like that over the last, 10 years. So what inspired it was the whole concept and feeling of somebody on the internet is wrong. And so you write a little thing and you're like, no, it's not that way. I remember we've got a thing in there about light bulbs. And I remember reading somebody saying something about CFLs are great and LEDs are great. And then I tried to reply on the internet, and then it was like 3 hours later, I thought, oh, this is getting so big it won't fit here. I'm going to have to start. So I moved it over to a word processor, just kept going into like 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I got up in the morning and I just kept going, and it ended up being this massive article about it's not what you think. The whole light bulb thing is like the most famous greenwashing there is. It's you're thinking it's light bulbs because that's what it says on the package, but the package has left so much out. And so I wrote this massive thing. And then it ended up being that I ended up making all kinds of YouTube videos and podcasts, and it's like a big part of that had to do with the fact of like I would go out and try and talk about permaculture, like let's talk about hugelkultur or something like that, and then people are like, oh, I don't want to hear about that permaculture stuff because I already bought the light bulbs. And it's like, no, what you bought is worse. You've made the environment worse, and it's like so I just needed to say it all, and then. What I really want to be is like the hugelkultur guy or the natural building guy or something like that. And instead, I've ended up as the light bulb guy, which is not what I want to be at all. But it's kind of like, no, if you care about the environment, you don't just believe whatever's written on the box. It's such a richer story, and there's a much better way. I'm sorry. I think I'm rambling now. Stop me!
So let's talk about luxuriant environmentalism. That's a concept that you bring up in your book. I don't know if you coined the term or if the term was already out there, but it's one I like.
Somebody asked me the other day how we came up with luxuriant environmentalism. They were complaining because it sounds like some kind of shampoo. Well, actually, the book tells you not to use shampoo, but okay. I think how it came up is that we got a brand new image that looked really great for our Kickstarter, and but the words on it seemed kind of weak. And so Shawn and I sat down and spent an hour like, what can we do to make it sound better? And we ended up with luxuriant environmentalism, which I think really, like the whole book could be called luxuriant environmentalism. Would you agree with that, Shawn?
Yeah, I guess we could have saved some vowels if we would have gone that way.
Can you tell?
Instead, we went the master's thesis route.
Can you tell us more about what that means, luxuriant environmentalism?
I think that we're presenting a recipe of things that you can do in your own home, or with yourself, or on your land, or whatever, all the different, for apartments, whatever. And I think it improves, because so many things about environmentalism are about sacrifice. And so what we're trying to do, and I think we've done a very good job of doing this, is to paint paths that have not only do they not have sacrifice, but they make for a more luxuriant life, while at the same time saving the earth and saving money. So I think one of the great examples is we kind of alluded to this a moment ago, is what's called going poo-less, which is where you do not use soap and shampoo in the shower. Still take as many showers as you always have. Hell, take more if you want. But it turns out that soap and shampoo, it's all marketing. You don't need it. That like 99.9% of your body funk is water soluble. And so you just go and you get in the shower, there it all goes, and there was no need to have soap. Really, but the only time you need any soap or shampoo or anything like that is if like somebody sprays you down with oil or grease or something like that. Now soap is going to do its magic to help get that off of you, whereas water alone is not going to do a very good job. So now what happens is that you're buying less toxic gick, because a lot of people get really sick from their soaps and shampoos. You're spending less money, you're doing less shopping, and on top of that, your shower goes from an average in the United States of 8 minutes down to about a little over a minute. So your hot water use and water use are dramatically reduced. So you've done big, big things for the environment. You've made no sacrifice, but your life is now more luxuriant. You have more time, you have more money. You're rubbing less toxic gick all over yourself. You're a healthier person, and there's less impact on the environment. I think another great thing is like at some point in time, would you consider a gray water system? And if you're going to consider that, or if you don't like the idea of putting toxic gick down the drain to go into the environment, I mean, I think that this whole poo-less concept works well for that as well. So from multiple facets, you're making the environment better and saving money. I vote it is more luxuriant and better for the environment. Does this help paint a picture?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that really resonates with a lot of people in our community who want to live comfortably, who care about the environment, and for whom that, I think the mainstream image we have of environmentalism is totally centered around sacrifice, and it's not very appealing, and it's not really pulling in more people to the cause.
Well, and I think that's the thing is, I think we have the opportunity to get 10 times more people, because it's not a pity thing, it's not a guilt thing, it's, hey, I can live a more enjoyable life by doing this, why wouldn't I? And then, after the fact, we can point out, oh, by the way, you also maybe saved the planet. Thanks.
And so then say someone wants to take it a step further. They want to learn about building a gray water system. They want to turn their backyard into a permaculture garden. Where can they get those skills?
Oh, I think that there's a buffet of things. I know that Shawn and I have spent the last 5 months in parallel with writing the book, the last year and a half, working on developing the PEP program, which is a way to build skills at home and document it, and hopefully someday impress somebody enough that somebody might will their land to you, or you might get a speaking gig or something like that. So there's that. There's, of course, permaculture design courses, which are generally a 2-week course that's going to be mostly classroom time. So it's not exactly an experience thing in one respect, but on the other hand, I think there is a lot of massive experience that you get from a permaculture design course that is like not part of what's planned. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of programs out there. We offer something here at my place we call the Permaculture Bootcamp, learn permaculture through a little hard work. And it's kind of like woofing. I'm not sure if, now, of course, yeah, so like woofing is going to be something where you go someplace and you work, I believe it's 4 to 6 hours a day, and then you get a place to pitch a tent, some basic staple foods. And so that's a way to build those experiences. And I think it depends on where you go. Some places where you go to woof, they are like barely organic, and some places that you're going to go are going to be intensely organic. And some places are going to go beyond intensely organic into the world of permaculture, possibly even biodynamic. Some of those areas, and some people are kind of like, oh, I love permaculture, but I don't like biodynamic. But those are a little harder to find. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, and I need to make a mention of New Mundo here, because we do exist to, I think, fill some of those gaps and connect people with some incredible permaculture projects and learning experiences around the world.
I was just looking at your site before we got on here. You have a whole bunch of different courses and stuff looking on there. That's pretty cool.
We have a lot of PDCs listed on the site.
Yeah. So you guys have a lot of stuff that's in tropical and subtropical. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And we're also pretty active in the US, but we started here in Central America. So a good chunk of our community is concentrated here.
So I'm in Montana, and we've got a PDC that we're offering this year. And it starts, I think, in June. Followed by, every year when we do the PDC, we followed by the appropriate technology course, which is about a 2-week course. It's far more hands-on, very low on classroom. And we're usually building new things, or getting experience building certain things.
Awesome.
But it's kind of like, because a PDC in Costa Rica is going to be extremely different. So you're going to be doing biochar and swales. Whereas up here in the north, we're going to not do biochar and not do swales. We're going to probably do more hugelculture. So there are some pretty serious differences. You're going to be more like, year-round harvest, and your flavor of year-round harvest is going to be very different from our flavor of year-round harvest.
A lot more fruit.
Well, that's right. Shawn's in Canada. It's even colder.
So this book, it's going to be sold through a Kickstarter campaign. Is that correct?
Yes.
This is not your first Kickstarter campaign.
This is my 8th Kickstarter.
Your 8th. And you've been very successful in your Kickstarter campaigns, I'm told.
I think I've been successful. And so I think the lowest I've collected on a Kickstarter is $65,000, and the most $5. Now, there are Kickstarters out there that get millions of dollars, and I'm baffled at how they do that. But there's also been a lot of Kickstarters that get either zero or not funded, and things of that nature. I've been approached. I want to say 100 times, but I don't think it's been 100 times. It's probably been like 60, 70 times where people are like, "I'm doing a Kickstarter. Can you give me advice?" So I give them advice.
So can you tell us what that advice is, and maybe it will save you another couple dozen times answering?
Hey, that's a great idea.
I think that one thing is that we recorded some podcasts about how to do a Kickstarter. That was like, wow, a couple of years ago. And so I've heard a lot of people that have listened to those. But I think at the top of the list is give stuff away. And not necessarily during the Kickstarter. I mean, I'm talking about like a year or two before your Kickstarter starts. Show like what your style is, what your kind of thing is that you do, stuff like that. And then say to people, like, if you give me your email address, I'll tell you when my next thing comes out. But man, please don't spam me about that. But if you're just outright generous and just give it away without asking for anything in return, I think you build a lot of audience. A lot of people are pretty emphatic that you got to offer some stuff that's like a higher quality, and then say, I'll give this to you inside of my email address. It's like, we've tried a little bit of that. We haven't had really great success, but maybe we're doing that wrong. But I guess the bottom line is that my advice for somebody that's going to do a Kickstarter is to first give a bunch of stuff away for free. Just give lots of stuff away. In fact, what I did is I had been giving stuff away for free for years, and I never thought I would do a Kickstarter. And I was just giving it away because I just kind of wanted to get the things in my head out there and share it. And it seemed like there were a lot of people that appreciated it. And then I decided to try doing a Kickstarter. And I was like, I think I started the Kickstarter, and I said I need $18,000 to do the editing for these videos. And I kind of felt like there's no way I'm going to get $18,000, so now I don't have to do all this editing. I'm going to save myself all this work. And I got $92,000. So I had to do the editing. And I think that what made the big difference was all the stuff I gave away before. So that's my advice. That's my number. I mean, there's I could go on for about 5 or 6 hours. Shawn's probably sick to death hearing me talk about it. And of course, at the same time, Shawn and I have probably for the last 6 months, I don't know, probably put in 200 or 300 hours preparing for the Kickstarter, just Kickstarters.
Yeah, I have lost count.
Yeah.
A lot. Definitely a lot of time. And I think that goes into somewhat, yeah, I think that's another point that you and I were talking about just earlier with Toby was like hard work is probably one of the keys to a successful Kickstarter. And it seems so basic to say it, but yet so often you see Kickstarter campaigns and it's like, how are they not funded at all? And it's like, oh, I think they maybe just told their mom. And then, that's about all they did. Yeah. And they just hoped that the magic internet would bring them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's like 90% of why they fail is that they contact me and ask for help. And so we give them a shout out and stuff like that. And it turns out that like we bring them like 90% of the money that comes in. And I try to say, okay, the next thing you need to do is, and then they're kind of like, whatever. And then they don't do anything. They just kind of wait. They kind of like get the Kickstarter set up. They do a poor job of setting it up. And then they just kind of think people are going to magically show up from all over the world and give them money. And so they just kind of coast. And I've seen some Kickstarters where their product is amazing, but they just kind of didn't tell anybody about it. And then they either don't get funded or they get barely funded, and then they're kind of like, Kickstarter's stupid. And it's like you gotta tell people that it's there. Kickstarter isn't really into the business of telling people so much. They kind of have their own algorithms and stuff for like drawing people to what they think is the best. And really you're kind of on your own, but if you do well, it gets the attention of the bigger Kickstarter to bring more people in. And that's kind of like part of what we're hoping to do on our Kickstarter is like, can we do so well the first couple of days that we start to infect brains in the bigger Kickstarter world? Wouldn't that be spiffy?
That would be spiffy.
This is our big hope this year. We're trying new things this year on this Kickstarter. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure, Toby, you're in the same boat. A little bit obsessed with how do you get permaculture into more brains, like millions of brains. And for those that have heard of permaculture, how do you go from permaculture level 0 to permaculture level 1 and 2 and so forth? And it's like you just kind of get bit by the bug or something, and you're like, I want more people to know. It fixes everything. Mm-hmm. And so you just kind of are like bonkers about this. So it's kind of like, wow, what if we could get the word permaculture in front of like 1 million people because our Kickstarter got enough people that now it's being pushed in front of all the people that visit Kickstarter. Wouldn't that be so? So how do we do that? And so we're trying some things with this Kickstarter to hopefully help. But the big thing is to make people aware of the Kickstarter before it starts. Like what we're doing today.
Yeah, so to summarize, there's not a magic bullet. There's no secret formula. It's hard work and passion and persistence. And I think we see the same thing at New Mundo with the impact centers and courses that are listed on our platform as the ones that fill up and are really successful. They're at it 24/7, months ahead of time, promoting, reaching out to their communities, reaching beyond their communities. And there's nothing easy about it.
Absolutely. And what works for one person won't necessarily work for another, right? I know some people who swear by the whole, do Facebook ads, it solves everything thing. And that works for them and it doesn't work for others. And so I think it's about finding what works for you. And in order to find what works for you, you kind of have to try
100 things, 2 of them will work out, and you never know in advance which 2.
So we have a little bit of time left, and Paul and Shawn, you both come from software engineering backgrounds. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And now you're both in a different world. You're both working in permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and a whole lot of other cool things in that niche. How did, maybe not what's the bridge, what is the bridge between those 2 occupations or those 2 realms of interest?
I think I see a lot of people in tech in permaculture. Mm-hmm. Either they're currently still working in tech and have a very strong interest in permaculture, or like us, they've decided to step away from a successful career and pursue infecting brains with permaculture. And I kind of feel like in the world of tech, in the world of software engineering, we're generally working with, I'm not sure about you, Shawn, but I know that I did a lot of work with massive systems, with very complex systems.
Right.
And so, for example, I'm the architect of the ground systems for some of the spacecraft that take pictures for Google Earth. And that we had like 80 to 100 engineers working on that. It's a very massive system. And then it's kind of like, well, when you start wrapping your head around some of the world's problems, you start to realize that the solutions that we're presented with are actually very weak. And it's like that won't really do much of anything, which I think is kind of like the core of our book, is that the existing solutions that are presented that you can do at home are really weak. And it's like, for years, I've been talking about, this is kind of how I met Shawn, is I put into podcasts and articles and videos about bigger solutions. And it's a much richer solution. And a lot of times, a solution helps with many things. And then when you couple many of them together, now you've got something that really makes a big difference. And so I think a lot of people in tech are drawn to this more robust solution set, which is permaculture effectively. And so I kind of feel like you've got people that are used to this kind of thinking, where rather than like, I'm willing to give this 30 thought, so therefore I will read the box that comes on the light bulb, and that's all I'm willing to do, versus the people that have chosen a field that is far more difficult, and they're used to having to pour through a much more sophisticated solution, and need to read through 100 books to understand better solutions. And by the way, this will all change in 2 years. So that's one nice thing about permaculture, is that the things that we're working on are far more perennial. It's like, this is delicious. I mean, it's crazy complicated, and we haven't even scratched the surface. And there's so much room for optimization, but at least the things that we put together will last for decades, as opposed to like, oh yeah, then we start over in 2 years with a whole new technology. So it's like, it's so delicious. But when you start to care, like authentically care, and you start to realize the presented solutions are weak, then I think you develop a powerful appetite for permaculture.
I agree with that. And I think when I heard the question, I was thinking about when I was in my first year of university. I remember I was in engineering. They said, the question was, what is engineering? Because I had no idea. It was like, I was in this program, but I didn't know what is the definition, or what do engineers do? And I remember who the professor, I can't remember who it was, but they're standing in front of it. What engineers do is engineers design. And I think permaculture is very highly centered around design. And there's a lot of different ideas on what that looks like and how it's applied, but it's the critical thinking skills that I think a lot of tech and engineer like people highly focus on developing in a way that perhaps is less common in some other fields, not all. And so I think that's a big part of why our jobs for years were intentionally to solve problems. That's what engineers do. And so when we suddenly have the opportunity to solve world problems, the biggest problems of them all, I find as an engineer, when a bigger problem is presented, it comes to mind and says, okay, why am I working on this other problem? I got to go do the harder one. That's more fun. And so I think that's why you see a lot of engineers and engineer-like people getting into permaculture. And when you look at a lot of I'm always surprised when I look at a lot of the permaculture influencers out there over the last number of years, how many of them have engineering backgrounds. It's like 80% or something crazy like that. I don't know, maybe wrong, but a huge number of people. So I think that's pretty cool.
Great. We are out of time, but Shawn, Paul, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and sharing your thoughts on a whole bunch of things. Once again, Paul Wheaton, Shawn Klassen-Koop, they've just written a book called Building a Better World in Your Backyard. You can check out the Kickstarter and a lot of early bird goodies in the link in this video description. Paul and Shawn, thank you.
Thanks so much,
Joby.
We'll see you again.
Okay, bye.